I don't know yet.
We just sort of introduce ourselves, and he's Peter, and
well, I know you're Peter Nadal, so,
but nobody else does, do they?
well, no, I will probably have some narration.
Oh, I see. I see.
Mine got a real production.
So
Well,
is it running now?
Yeah.
Okay,
we're on.
we're here to talk about the 14 fleet at Queen City, of which we were founding members.
Two of the founding members.
Yeah, and happy and long-lasting members. And we were the original salesmen of the fleet. We spent as much time trying to sell other people on joining our fleet as we did sailing.
We, I would say at that point, Queen City had a very strong Snipe fleet, pretty good Comet fleet, pretty aggressive Lightning fleet as well, but no 14s to carry the flag forward in what was really the creme de la creme of local competition. And my father and his crew with Valhalla, one of his crew in Valhalla, Ed Stanger, brought in two Charlie Burke 51 hulls from Mahone Bay, finished them off, built the mast and the spar and the great hull out here. And Pete Jones, I guess a couple of years later, this would be 1952, 53, and you acquired Bess
in 55.
In 55, so
for the princely sum of $900. That was a top racing 14, and we stored them underneath the yacht club here, right just under where we're sitting. There was no wall. There was an old wooden wall. We used to pull the boats up on the wooden wall.
No launching ramp, but a 4-foot drop at the end of the year.
However, our backs were up to it in those days. And there was nothing else, you know. So we used to take the spars up and hang them underneath this veranda and pull the boats into the big lockers. And there was just room for the boats and a modicum of company.
Yeah, a modicum. It was Peter, a fellow called John Davies, who had an old Upper Fox, one of the early Upper Fox hulls. KC2 was her number. Yeah. I was 107, you were 106?
Yeah.
106. So the three of us were the nucleus of what grew over, I guess, the next 10 to 15 years into a very competitive group of international 14 sailors who carried Queen City's flag down to the east coast of the States and did reasonably well with the inter-club competitions between ourselves, RCYC. There were fleets at big fleets at Royals, National Yacht Club, Toronto Sailing Canoe Club, and Boulevard Club locally, Royal Hamilton.
Yeah.
A couple of boats out of Oakville, major fleets farther afield in Kingston, Ottawa at Britannia, and Royal St. Lawrence.
Yeah, Montreal.
Yeah, down in Montreal. The annual regatta CDA would host probably 75 to 95 boats throughout the 3 or 4 day period, and the classes were broken into, the fleet was broken into A, B, and C classes so that we get reasonably good starts and good competition for our level of ability.
Yeah, and yet the most exciting starts were always when they had a specific trophy up and everybody would start together. And there's just nothing so exciting as having 75 people all trying to get the right start at the same precise time. And it was just really, really fun.
You jog my memory, Peter, because there was Royals, I can't remember the name of the trophy that we were racing for, but Royals had a major fleet of 75 boats, probably part of CDA. I think it was part of CDA for one of their individual trophies. We were on a triangle out in the lake, and the line was set with just a slight favoring for a good port tack start if you were right on. You know, there were 75 boats out there, 74 boats were hurtling across the line on starboard, and Pete Jones hit the pin on port and took the entire fleet, and that was really an exciting moment.
That was very exciting. Unfortunately, it was rather short-lived. I know I didn't come anywhere near winning the race. I think I was probably happy with how, but the start was memorable.
That's what 14s are all about. There was precision, timing, driving. However, you know, you
could enjoy any part of the race.
Great moments.
Yeah, and it's funny, you didn't always just remember the end of the race. Quite often the start was the highlight, and you'd remember winning a start as well as you'd remember winning the end of the race.
And we'd build up really good rivalries within the fleet. It didn't matter whether you were first in the fleet, so long as, for instance, I beat Don Barnes from Burlington.
That's right. Yeah,
oh, Barney, I got you that time, you know. Or
you could be racing for 23rd and 24th and have just a super race. And I think it's almost a conclusion statement, I guess, and you shouldn't start off with the end, but I really think the end of what this thing is all about is that the people we competed against over 15 and 20 years are lifetime friends.
Yeah.
You bump into these people all over the world, and as soon as you meet, it's almost as though you're brothers in arms or something. There's a bond built up over that time that is the strongest bond that I've experienced. And gosh, we were in Hawaii with an old 14er who's now running the telescope, the Canada-France Hawaii telescope there.
Old Queen City member.
Yeah, Jerry Sofka. He sailed 14s out of here. He sailed them out of Montreal. He sailed them out of Boulevard. And we went over there and spent a week with him, and it's the most absolute accepting kind of relationship between us guys.
Actually, there are a lot of good memories in that way. For instance, Mrs. Sofka, Nani, wore a wetsuit. Was one of the only really incredible wetsuits that I had ever seen before they became very stylish for windsurfing and so on. And when Nani gave up 14s, I was really disappointed to discover she'd thrown her wetsuit away. I wanted to have it bronzed for posterity. But,
posterity, yes. That rings a bell.
Yeah.
Noni did things for that wetsuit that bronze couldn't do.
This is
Alan.
true. Well,
Gosh.
if I could bronze Nani, I would. But,
Not yet.
We're not yet. She's got a lot of years to go. But as Peter is saying, at that point, I guess from the mid-30s, there were international competitions between the States, Canada, and the U.S. and Britain. And virtually anybody who was really a top competitive sailor in the sailing world had cut their teeth on an international 14-foot dinghy. And when my dad built my boat and gave it to me in 1952-53, I didn't know he'd given me a Maserati until many years later. And it was just, I moved from my Savo Prime that he built for me. I got a 14. That's great. That's terrific. This was what I did at the island, and this is what I was here for. About 5 or 6 years ago, and this would be after sailing 14s 25 years, there was a testimonial dinner over at the RCYC for Paul McLaughlin, and 300 of the absolutely best sailors that I'd ever met anywhere were there to pay homage to this man, but more importantly to share in the joy of what Peter was just talking about, the pleasure of having sailed against each other at top level. Whether you were at the top, it didn't matter. You were part of a very special group of people. And that's what made that boat so special, and is still very special. It hurts both of us in the sense that there are no small boats sailing out of this club anymore. We're all into keels. I'm into a keel. I gotta have an ice box, but I've been under that 14 boom for so long it's getting too low now. There are just so many incredible memories. Currie Cup was the wrap-up of the season. It was a 3-boat team race between every boat that could muster, every club that could muster a fleet of 3 boats. Often it was held at Kingston, sometimes up here, very often up at Deep River.
Yes, or Ottawa, wherever it was coldest and windiest.
Yeah, coldest and windiest. And again, good competition between fleets. Ron and Rob Mazza, who grew up through the through the junior club program, got into 14s, and one of my fond memories of sailing with Ron down in Kingston Harbor. I was on the helm, he was trimming the jib on a broad reach, and gusting about 15 to 20, 25, and a major gust came through. We both went back to hike her down and keep her planing. My feet missed the hiking straps and went right over ass over tea kettle, and I ended up in the water holding onto the main sheet, belly planing along behind the boat. She's still going very fast, and as I'm holding onto the main sheet, the main's trimming in, and Ron, being an extremely good crew,
dedicated
back
man,
to see what the hell I was doing, trimmed the jib in, and as the boat is slowly going up, and I'm getting farther and farther behind, but still planing flat out, as the boat just went ass over tea kettle, he looked back to see what I was doing, and expected to see me, of course, hiking out behind him, and there I was 20 feet behind the boat, holding onto the main sheet, and the look on his face was absolutely priceless. And
why did you leave at a time like this?
We were having a good time, Ray. Get back on board here.
Oh dear.
But they're
the boats were demanding. The boats were very demanding, and I think that made the camaraderie all the more important because...
you had to have 3 other guys to launch the boats in the first place.
That's right, yeah. You could hardly launch. Well, we could pick the boat up. Well, I think my back is now telling me it wasn't too wise all those years for the 2 of us to play He-Man and pick the boat up fully rigged and walk down the dock. You could do it, but you only did it to frighten your competitors. It was really a silly thing to do.
Never
But they were so demanding, and all the boats were just a little bit different. They were all the same but different. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's a development class, so that there were certain parameters, length, height, sail area, and so on that you had to observe, but the rest of it was very flexible. And in fact, the hull was constantly evolving, the rig was constantly evolving, and that was also a source of great discussions at the annual general meeting, because you were actively involved in not only the sailing of the boat, but the design of the boat, what direction the class should take, and the arguments whether we should have trapezes. I mean,
yes.
God, now they've got 2 trapezes, and they're absolutely flat out going down. I mean, the International 14 invented the trapeze in the early 30s, or middle 30s, I guess. It was outlawed immediately, and other fleets took it up before we finally convinced ourselves we should do it again.
We should do it again.
But the...
But many of our members, including yourself, Al, finished off their own boats, which added again to the personal investment you had in this class. And
well, I remember particularly bringing one boat home from England and finishing off in my mother's front room over at Three Ottawa, just behind the club.
Long-suffering mother.
Well, she's been through a lot of boat building before, but never quite.
Not quite that bad, no.
That's right. That was a boat that couldn't get out of its own way, unfortunately, but...
looked beautiful.
It was beautifully finished, but it also brings back some wonderful memories of the camaraderie. I would valiantly finish the race well behind my friends. I would struggle up to the dinghy shed to discover that their boats were put away. They were into the 3rd beer, and we're just sort of casually strolling. Where's Al? Where's Al? There.
Of course, you weren't there.
Back, didn't we?
you weren't there to see how quickly we put the boats away, just so that we could relax when you arrived at the dock.
Folks like Arthur Earl sailed out of this club, Dennis Young, John Clemmer moved from a trimaran into international 14s. A lot of good people. Davy Bell, the Mazes went through the club, as you know. As a matter of fact, Ron is still trying valiantly to keep the 14 alive in some form or other with his B-14. Just a whole host of memories. Peter, of course, and we haven't mentioned this to this point, is one of the few people to be honored with the presentation of the Parkinson Trophy, which is emblematic of, represents the absolute best representation of Queen City abroad for the year it was awarded. And that was the late 60s?
Yeah, I guess it was the late 60s. It was, being an islander, there was no need to own an automobile. And actually, an automobile for an islander is a pain in the neck because you got to find somewhere to leave it on the other side. And it was much worse now than it used to be, but it was still a pain then. So I finally got a car so that I could take my 14 off and race it in these other areas without depending on someone else to drag the thing along for me. And everybody had come home from Buzzards Bay saying what an incredible place it was to sail. Oh, you've got to come there, he says. You know, you wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and the drapes inside the rooms are horizontal. The wind's already, you know, up to hurricane strength, and the waves are as high as small buildings, and it's just the most fun in the world. And so I said, well, that's not exactly my kind of sailing, not being a very big and heavy fella, but just the same, everybody has said it was so wonderful for so long that my crew, Johnny Lai and I, said, okay, we got to try this thing. So we put the...
That's Rae Lai's son, by the way.
Yeah, you were just speaking to Ray. His eldest son, Johnny, who sailed with me for years.
Junior Club product.
Junior Club, yeah. Good Queen City Junior Club product, the product of Alan's tutelage. And so down we went. And what did we get the first day? But absolutely typical Toronto Bay conditions. A nice little 10-mile-an-hour breeze
right up
with
Jones's alley.
a little chop about maybe 2.5 inches high. and we got a first and a second. And even though the next day there was one race sailed in very heavy conditions, but the points that we'd gathered on the first day in the very untypical Buzzards Bay conditions were enough to give us the trophy. So
if he's saying he backed into the trophy, he's trying to bullshit you. He was one of the best sailors this club's ever seen, and still is.
I certainly not still is, Val. I'd be frightened to get into a 14 now. As a matter of fact, I really sidestepped Ron the other day when he tried to trick me into going out in his 14 and reminding myself once again how tough it was. But it was awfully good fun back in those days. We raced Wednesday nights, and then when we got good enough that the guys at Royals realized that we were going to be good competition, they decided that we should join them on Thursday nights.
They raced with us Wednesdays, and we raced with them Thursdays.
And then a fleet started up at Island Yacht Club. They raced on Mondays,
right.
so we started racing Mondays. So that meant you raced at least Saturday, probably day sailed Sunday. You raced Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. It only left you Tuesday and Friday to work on the boat.
To get the boat ready for getting out again. At that point, I was teaching junior club. I mean, I was on the water 7 days a week, and I was having absolute bliss. I just wonder where I went wrong. You know, I really miss those days. They were pretty special.
Can't keep it up forever. They were special days.
We also had an advantage, which you haven't mentioned at this point. Both Peter and I were brought up on the island. My father built the house over in Ottawa, just behind Queen City in '42. It quickly became the Queen City Annex, and Pete was up on Center Island. We've known each other since, what, we were 9 or 10 years old, I guess.
Yeah, we were public school.
Yeah, public school buddies, and just came to this incredibly wonderful sport by osmosis, natural,
being in the right place at the right time.
Progression, yeah.
Dead lucky, I think, Alan.
Dead lucky indeed. And it's very special sitting here and trying to figure out what to say. When Peter and I haul my boat out together each year, and we have a little jaw. I should bring this out in the boat next year. It'd be really good. But it's just so many memories of individuals. I mean, we're talking about 14s particularly, but and I'm presumably talking to other people about other characters within the club. But this club is a very special place in our hearts. You know, we aren't driving the 14s, obviously, and